There we go.
Thank you. Okay, the agenda was to work over use cases and do the bounded, I don't know if Stephen had time to prepare that, but do work of separating bounded domains.
No, but I love the document you have open right now. So I did not prepare anything. My only suggestion was, rather than modeling, I wanted to focus on complete user stories, as you have listed several here, as A, X, so that Y. That's the focus I was missing in some of the last meetings, and I would very much like to make the focus that now. And it seems like you have the same goal here.
Good. So let's proceed. So for now I'm not sure what methodology to go. For me, these are use cases I've identified. Maybe we should run through them and clarify them as first step. Do we agree? Agreement, maybe second step, but clarification seems to be a first step.
Prioritization as well, I think, like which ones, which is probably also has to do with agreements.
Yeah, and maybe the other thing is to see if there are some that you think belong in distinct domains.
That's the next step, but yeah, I already do, of course.
Okay. So first use case, as a user, I want to express my worldview as thought so I can share it with other people. I've sent that, sorry, I'm trying to, I've sent that before, but I'll resend it in the Zoom chat so you have it handy.
Is there any way we can split the ones that you listed as good suggestions now from the ones that we agree on as a type of process during this meeting? Maybe it's just a matter of putting them in a separate heading, or?
That's a good question. I've been just writing. I haven't thought about methodology so much. I think I'll use colors, or maybe we could use initials for signing off.
Yeah, whatever works right now, I think.
Yeah. And now you have the link. The link should allow you to edit, if I'm not wrong. So as a user, I want to express my worldviews as thoughts so I can share it with other people. And here thoughts is a bit less formal than sometimes, but I want to make it clear that I'm including entities, claims, arguments. So really it could be topics, but I didn't use topics because symbols are not thoughts.
When you say entities plus claims plus arguments,
and they're all subclasses one of another, but since
do you want to, because I would say, I mean, I had a very similar use case written in Hangouts a couple of weeks ago. So I think this is an important one to start with, but I would narrow it down to my argumentation, my point of view. I think it's similar because you write entities plus claims plus arguments, but I guess a question to test that, whether or not it's similar, would be to ask you, would you expect users to only share entities as part of this use case without any claims about them or arguments?
I think that could be possible, yes.
I don't see that as a use case. I do see as a use case, indeed, the main use case that I think we should focus on, arguments. But I think the entities only, within my use case, only makes sense in the context of the arguments.
Okay, I think sharing an entity without a claim about it will be extremely rare, but I do see people introducing entities and saying, when I say this word, this is what I mean. So there's kind of definitional claims as part of the introducing the entity. And that's something we've been doing all the time, saying, I'm introducing this. What's an entity? What's a topic? So right. Introducing entities with definitions, hence claims.
Yeah. But maybe these are two separate use cases? Because I agree that's a valid use case, but maybe these are two separate ones.
Maybe we could distinguish entities, claims, and arguments as separate. I was trying to avoid that, but yeah.
No, but so that is different. You just said, I want to share definitions of entities so that it's clear to other people what I'm talking about. That's one use case. Another use case is, I want to share my arguments so that they better understand me or so that I may convince them. So that in these two use cases is different, which is a good indication.
That's a good point. Okay, that convinces me. Timothy, you had something before I?
Yeah, this is just
very much out of the scope of what I would want to build. I don't know how we manage that discussion, but if it were the canonical debate as I would like to build it, I don't want this. I don't want conversation built into it. I don't want negotiation.
It's a bit unclear what you're hinting at right now. Which specific use case do you have in mind? Because at this point, we're still trying to understand the use case. So which specific use case, the way you understand it right now, don't you think is within scope of the canonical debate?
So I'm specifically referring to what Marc-Antoine said about, no, I would want to be able to explain exactly what I meant by that word. The way, it's more how he envisioned or explains it happening, which means it's not, so like in my vision of the canonical debate, I think it would be interesting to be able to show your set of positions on an argument map, right? I believe this and this and that and that and that. This is why I believe that. And when I see something like you're having a conversation with somebody that's immigration is bad. This is what I mean by immigration is bad, and I would then link to a specific claim and show them that claim. And that would happen outside the system. You would grab a link from the system and show it somewhere else where you're having the conversation versus having it built into the system where this conversation is happening. And so, it's a vague use case, and really my objection is more on how I see it being realized than.
Yeah, but that should be left out of it, right? So the objection should be with the use case right now. And I do see that, but it would be nice if you could express it as a use case, because it sounds really
so, I want to express,
because well, either way, this is a good reason to break up that one big one, Marc-Antoine, which I see you doing, exactly because we see it as different parts, so we need to be more granular.
No, I understand. And there is a conversation there, which I think is absolutely important. I do believe that to achieve canonicality, we need to have the conversation. I don't believe the canonicality can happen without the conversation. And that's a conversation we need to have. And that's at the core of all our disagreements, right? You believe that you can achieve canonicality in abstracto, and I don't think that's possible. And that's why I don't, and that's why, even though I see the point of the separate domains in theory because they help us think things separately, I don't believe the domains will be separated in practice.
But you keep, are you talking to me now? Because you keep.
I'm talking to both.
Okay, because for me it's a straw man argument. I think you keep misinterpreting when I talk about separate domains what I mean by curation domain, and what it means for them to be separate. It's they still work together. I still want them to work in one system, and in that sense, I fully agree. So,
no, and that's why I said I value the intellectual carving out, so they're easier to understand as a whole. And that way, that's why I did buy into the separate. Okay. No, I don't think I'm misunderstanding, but I'm saying it does mean, I think in practice, what you call the curation domain will be at the root of all operations. Which I know you don't agree with, but
no, I don't necessarily disagree with that at all. The argument modeling domain I look at more as maybe something. The main interactions with that would be in single user systems. It would be more from a development perspective. It would be more, the non-collaborative part of it, and the exchange format part, where if you want to exchange a subset of an argument, then that's the realm that would live in. But indeed, if you want to start arguing with other people about parts of that domain, yes, indeed, the curation one would be the main one. And by all means, because that's what CDL hopes to do, that's where all the important ones lie. But this is about pinning it first down, like the focus to the model it would actually eventually operate on. But we're jumping way ahead here because
we're jumping way ahead. We're jumping way ahead.
We're trying to identify. We were like the user wanted to share thoughts, and we just pinned it down to different things. So which one did you write?
1 and 2. I'm totally rewriting 3 right now. I want to express
So I would go even more high level, because the claim for me, there's sub problems. I think one of the main things we've been missing so far in the argument modeling efforts is this group. Like, why does, this is the use case, right? You have argumentative writing. A person writes an argument in text. That use case, you want to formalize it, right? You want someone to be able to have a formalized argument model of that text. That for me is a use case. As a user, I want to share my argumentation in order to convince, make other people understand. I would even say so that other people can respond to it, etc. And I don't think for that use case, we already need to jump to claims and entities. The question is, what is that big piece of argumentative communication called?
Yeah, and that's something that I don't see in the core system. I don't see that as being a core part. And you know, one of the
I think first I'd like Stephen to repeat some things, because I'm not sure I got what he said, and then I'll get to your. Okay.
Are you thinking your web page that pulls together the bunch of arguments into a paragraph? Is
that's one front end for that? But the main reason why people, in my opinion, want to share arguments is because they want to share their arguments. They want to share their worldview. They want to communicate their line of thinking. And yes, that can be through web page. Yes, it can be through CDL. Yes, it can be. But the point is, the use case is, I have a set of claims that are all linked together that make a point. I want to have that subset of that, my argument. This is what I believe in for these reasons, and communicate that to someone else.
Yep.
Right. So a question of whether or not that is a core feature or not. And core, when I say core feature, it means like the absolute minimum set of objects and features that need to be there for everything else, right? And when you talk about doing that, you've already said you can picture hundreds of different ways of expressing that, of somebody doing that, right? And so to bake one into the system it would be very limiting. Like there's a core.
What do you mean by to bake one? I don't get it. Because
by that I mean like you're going to build this system so it is designed to pull together the ideas in a way to show it to somebody else.
No, we're not implementing anything. We're gathering use cases. Why do people want to use stuffed argument technology? Why do people want to use CDL? This is a real world use case. This is why people write articles. It's not about what.
I mean, I could put it as a user. I want to win the argument.
Yeah, exactly. That's a use case.
I want to build that in the system. No, I'm not going to build into canonical debate.
No. It's not about building it in the system. No. Sorry, Tim.
So these use cases are things people want, whether or not they're going to be represented by the system.
That's correct.
Yes.
Okay.
That's the domain. Okay. These are use cases. This is the domain of argumentation. This is why people want to use argumentation systems. If not, then I mean, let me put it this way. What is the main use case then for you for CDL? As a user, I want to.
Why are you building CDL? That's a very good question.
Well, there's a lot of reasons, not just one.
No, not the reasons, the use cases. Yeah. Why? How are you going to attract users that want to use your system? I know.
Okay, here's one of the key ones. As a user, I want to be able to look up at a glance all the reasons for and against a claim.
Yeah, that's a good use case.
Perfectly good, and it should be there.
So now, can you give me a use case?
Isn't it in general this the same motivation as Wikipedia or Stack Overflow? Like, why are people doing that?
Exactly. Well, they want to look it up, but now to get to the point of more why I'm focusing on as a user, I want to share. What is the main use case? How people will contribute?
And there, I think it's the same thing like Wikipedia. Why do people contribute to Wikipedia or Stack Overflow?
No, but what is the use case?
Yeah, we just want to write that down, but yeah.
As a user, I want to contribute to the communal.
As a user, I want to correct someone that's wrong on the internet is really kind of what it comes down to, right?
Yeah, but what do you correct?
That's a big one. Yeah.
So the interaction will be restricted to claims. This is somewhat what I am hinting at, what I hear right now. Like as a user, the only thing I can interact with is like claims.
So you're implying that we may be focusing our use cases too narrowly, and you would like to
Yeah.
just get what is at the core emotional thrust of the people so that we can fulfill it.
Yeah, I would
I mean,
say
the
that as a user, you don't
mean-
just say, oh, this claim. The so that of users is not just.
So that is very important. It's the question is what need are we fulfilling? What problem are we trying to solve? And I think that's a perfectly valid question to ask. When you're building a system, you expect that people will adopt it because it solves the problem they have. And yeah, understanding users' motivations is at the key of making not only a good product, but a used product.
Yeah.
Right.
And I
So
would argue if
Well,
a
okay,
user interacts with a claim and they want to say that claim is wrong, or they like take the use case we do agree on as a user, you want to see all the reasons for believing and not believing in something, that one I think should probably go on top, because I think there's no misalignment there.
Well,
But if you then want to contribute to that,
okay.
the main that is you want to bring in your whole argumentation, you have all your arguments why that is true or false, right?
Let's do this. I think I get the exercise now, and so I think we should treat it as a completely blue sky brainstorming activity, which means nobody criticize or comment on a use case except understand it, and let's get them all out. Which includes me, obviously. I've been saying no, I don't want it in there, so I'm not going to say that anymore. Let's blue sky everything, every reason we think somebody might be interested or want the system to exist.
Okay, so I guess I should write it down.
Well,
I was
this
going to
is
say
what
it out loud, but
this is document. Yeah, and this is what this document is. It's trying to write this down.
No, you can say it. We should say it one. So everybody
so
absorbs
let me
each
just,
one.
the main thing that I think of, like, even if we draw all the way back, and the main thing for reason score is I want to be able to respond to someone's inane social media post and change their mind, or at least shame them into not killing babies by saying we shouldn't have vaccines, right? So maybe we should phrase that in a less
Right. I want to prove somebody
way.
wrong, right?
Yeah. I literally want to
that.
change their mind.
So that's a so that, but what's the action you do for that so that?
I want to share a piece of content that will change their mind, so that it will change their mind. I mean, that's there. How I get to changing their mind isn't.
So that's about accurate.
Yeah.
That's
right.
As a user, I want to know the truth about something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Why does this blue?
Or like, if you want to turn it, I guess it's the so that is, I want to know. So as a user, I want to be able to look up a subject or a claim so that I know the truth about it.
A controversial issue. I guess it still is a claim, usually.
Yeah. As a user, I want to contribute a specific piece of evidence to the general knowledge. In other words, I wish to contribute to the accumulated knowledge of everyone.
So, but do you see that? I mean, all of this is good. This definitely highlights more of the so that's, but the actions are all very abstract and unspecified, right? Like
that's fine at this point. We're yeah. I mean, and since this is blue sky brainstorming, they could be at any level at this point, and then we can sort it.
I think this level is useful, but we do want to go down to a real use case which has both aspects, right? Action and goal. This is going into the goals is good. I think it's valuable.
Yeah, especially since we haven't done too much of that before. Well, maybe we have.
But yeah, I mean, the more specific version of what I was saying is, as a user, I want to submit a piece of evidence to contribute to general knowledge. So that's the more specific action.
is the main thing wanting to contribute general knowledge, or is it to correct an erroneous
It's both.
judgment?
There are both kinds of people.
I think there are, correcting somebody or teaching somebody in general is a use case, and learning is a use case.
Well, I'm differentiating between teaching an individual and correcting a social
Right.
norm.
Correct.
As
But
two
you
different
know,
use cases.
on the one hand, I agree. On the other hand, unfortunately, societies are partly corrected one person at a time, right? I say partly because it's true that mass media play a role in changing the Overton window, and that's different than changing opinions one person at a time.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that CDL will become like an Overton one. You know, if it is our collective.
Right, and this is
Sense
where I wish Jamie were here, because she would say, and I'm a bit not conflicted. I'm still thinking about that one. Let's put it this way. But she would say it's not the role of Society Library, and I know this is not CDL Society Library, but
Sure.
Our common systems. It's not the role to define the Overton window. We should have all positions, no matter how outrageous, but contextualized.
Well, yeah, I guess my only concern of the way this is written is that if there's enough evidence, does someone really want to add more evidence? Is the goal just to add evidence? They're not adding evidence. They're adding evidence because someone needs it.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Okay, I happen to have the one footage of some altercation that happened, the Kyle Rittenhouse thing or whatever. I happen to have the footage.
Yeah, but if you have the 100th, do you really want to add it?
Well,
I'm saying the goal isn't just adding evidence
to general knowledge. Like the question is,
okay, so that's
I want to contribute to general
mean.
knowledge. Yeah,
okay.
I want to feel like I'm improving.
And I would see, and that's a specific use case. I don't think that's a generic system, but I could see somebody building a system a bit like Change My Mind, where we look at all the pieces of evidence and which one has the most impact. But you need to have them all to be able to judge which one has the most impact on changing people's minds.
Yeah, the only thing I've seen recently is that, like, if I have a researcher go in and pull all the data, like kind of like what Jamie's doing, is a significant percentage of that time is wasted time, because those aren't claims that will change anyone's mind.
But here's the thing: is that anything that is debatable and people are debating, somebody cares about, and this is why.
Yeah, anything anyone's debating.
Crowdsourcing is important.
Right? But putting information in, but answering a claim that no one on the other side has made is a waste of time and a distraction.
There I agree, but I don't think that anything that Jamie's doing is a claim that nobody's made, because she's taking it from people making claims. She's taking it from media.
Mm-hmm.
Answering marginal claims.
But Bentley, as a user, I want to know what are the most important debates or something like that.
Well, when you said contributing to general knowledge, that was the bit that I was taking umbrage to incorrectly. Your intent with that is I want to improve the knowledge scape, and adding a claim that no one cares about is not improving the knowledge.
But it's the person who's contributing who's feeling that, whether they're right or wrong.
But they feel it because they think it's. But they think it's because it's useful.
You're adding knowledge for us, so that you're focusing on. It's very important to distinguish what you're trying to achieve ultimately by adding general knowledge, and I think that's where you're probably agreeing.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm saying I'm agreeing with it now. I just have a thing in that area, so ignore me.
No, I think your point, Bentley, and it's well taken, is only real beliefs, not made up beliefs, and maybe that should be a note or a constraint, or
And it's kind of like not straw manning the other side
Ah,
because, yeah, because
Straw manning's okay.
well, yeah, it's a nit. Let's not go. I've paid people to straw man the other side on accident. I don't want to have to happen here. So,
I mean, strawmans are also a form of convincing, right? It's just
well, no, but I'm not even saying intentionally. I'm saying you accidentally, if you're having people just add evidence, you get a lot of crap, and then you just have to filter through it later.
But on the other hand, Bentley, I would argue. I see what you're saying, but I would argue if somebody adds the straw man, it is somebody making a straw man argument, and that means the straw man argument is being made and believed by someone and needs to be refuted.
Not if it's just a researcher trying to gather all the data.
yeah.
I've seen that. I've had time wasted that where people are just like, oh, well, that information's not in there. And it's like, was anyone really gonna use that? It distracts. If that's included in the UI, then it becomes overwhelming. But it's not a big issue.
It's like, yeah, that's why this is another use cases as a
exactly.
user.
Arguing as a researcher, I'm adding a piece of knowledge to make sure everything that's mentioned on the internet is encompassed. Would not be a use case that we necessarily want to support yet. But if a user is adding a piece of knowledge so that they hope to convince someone else, that is an actual use case. I think it is a separate use case.
Yeah.
But I would say as a user, I want to be able to filter out the junk so that my time is not wasted or something like that. I don't.
Do we want use cases that go into our scoring yet, or do we want to not?
I'd like us to finish what is there already before we get into scoring.
All right, that's what I want to find.
Sorry, I think we're getting into a lot of rabbit holes, and we haven't done the. I was trying to have a kind of big categories, like big overhanging use cases, and Stephen already got me to break one up, and I think it's useful to do so. But
so
like,
we
for
definitely
example,
have two, right? One is consuming, the other one is contributing.
Yeah, definitely that's one category. See, when Tim introduced, I want to find my claim to see all opposing and supporting arguments, which is a perfectly valid use case. I said, this is a variant of something I had introduced earlier. As a user, I want a global map of conflicting thoughts of many people to gauge the scope of diversity of opinion. Now, it is true that this moves more into scoring and population dynamics than Tim would. And so maybe I need to separate those two. But again, I'm saying this, for me, this was a subcase of this. Maybe they're separate and they need to be separated. But the notion of knowing the map, knowing the global map is the generic thing.
I think there's a real big problem here that a lot of these use cases don't focus truly on the SODAT. They place the expected interaction as a SODAT. And that's the exact opposite. Like, I wouldn't say that to see all opposing and supporting arguments necessarily is the SODAT. I would say I want to see as the action, I want to see all supporting and opposing arguments. What is a SODAT of that? That is a SODAT. And
so that I can make up my mind about
exactly.
the truth.
Exactly. Yeah. And these are the use cases that's on a user. We don't want to write interactions as use cases without focusing on what the actual user is and what the expected outcome is, because then the whole exercise is tailored to one specific type of system.
But this is a so that, sorry. With a bit of grammatical rewriting, but not substance rewriting. I think gauging the scope of diversity of opinion is a perfectly appropriate so that, in the sense that, and it is more than knowing the scope of here are opposing and
that's one interaction to enable that so that, but there's many other ways of enabling that so that. That's the interesting bit.
Yes. No, I agree. But I'm saying it is a variant, but it is a distinct variant, and may be interesting to dig into how it is different. But the scope of diversity of opinion does require a bit of a map of the population belief, which is not in the, not pure argumentation map. And maybe and that way it's probably a distinct bounded domain. And I agree it's a distinct bounded domain.
But I guess my variant should be rewritten. I want to see.
I think actually.
I want to find my claim in the system and see all opposing and supporting arguments so that I can make up my mind quickly.
Yes.
Ah.
And it supports other use cases as well, that interaction.
Okay.
Including seeing the diversity of opinions or which arguments carry most weight might be able to be done with that if you have some additional interaction mechanisms.
Yeah, please write yourself your own claims. I'm doing it. I'm doing secretary as well as leader, and it's a bit.
But now it's more brainstorming, right? I mean, there's no real process, so we have a huge list of different.
Well, we said we would go through them and see if we agree or not, and we didn't yet.
I think there was one we agreed on.
We went through the first one. We broke it. I think it's clarified in the new format, but we didn't even go over my reformulations. I mean, you proposed breaking down, which I think was a win. And now, do you agree with this new formulation of my original use case?
Well, probably not, but we'd have to go over it in detail.
Yeah,
again,
that's exactly what I'm proposing we do. I think we had said we'd go over them and ask clarifying question and reformulate them until we're happy with them, and that was to be the process.
But I think we had most agreement on the consumption use cases, so I'd focus on those for now. I would try to pinpoint. I think we had something along the lines of, as a user, I want to find. I think it might have been the one that revolved around.
Sorry, as process owner of Friday, I tend to focus more on the points of disagreement than the points of agreement.
But I would argue there will be disagreement about that use case we also seem to agree on, because I'm trying to dig more into the actual things you interact with. I mean, claim has popped up a couple of times, evidence has popped up a couple of times, knowledge has popped up.
That's good.
Like what is that? Like what are these main things we interact on? Is it really always a claim? I disagree. I don't think it's a claim. I think the preferred interaction to cover most use cases are sets of claims. That's where I'm getting at. But it might be from the consumption perspective, it might be that it's more claim oriented.
So in my practice with this sort of thing, going with what Bentley said more or less, what starts me off on something like that is I see something contested online and I want to go map that out, right? So I start with a single claim and then I see as I'm going, it breaks up into other claims. Like there was something about somebody supposedly, there was a recording where somebody supposedly said something racist, right? So I started to write up that claim. But then I realized actually that broke out into other claims. So because it was first, what did they actually say? Did they actually say this thing? And then a second claim is that thing that they said racist? So that's at least one pattern of interaction where it's not, I'm going to go express a worldview. It's, oh, there's something going on and I want to attack that. And I start seeing that it breaks out into lots of little issues.
It sounds like you're saying as a user, I want to add a claim so that I can analyze it in more detail by...
what do you think of my formulation?
As a contributor. Yeah, I would say so that is to resolve a controversy, I would argue, but yeah. So I don't see what is interaction here.
Map out in a series of claims of argument. Map it out in a series of claims and arguments.
Yeah, but I think that Timothy, wasn't your point here that your entry point to start doing that is by adding one claim to the system? Or did I miss?
Map it out.
Well, but you can't map it out without starting with one, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Map it, yeah.
I think it's a totally valid use case, and it's a valid use case that specifically points to one claim, which is interesting because it does mean that the we do agree more or less on what a claim is. And here you have a use case that covers a so that, and there's a reason for adding that claim, which is really good because now we have an interaction and we have a reason.
Yeah, absolutely. This is good.
But so I would say as a contributor, I want to add a claim so that I can next resolve controversy I saw online by analyzing the claim in detail, something along those lines. And then the subsequent actions on that claim will be dictated by that use case. It might be by adding supporting and opposing evidence, which is then the implementation of analyzing, basically.
Right. Oh, so what you're saying is first enter the original claim and
Yes.
then.
Yeah, so I really like this use case because it's a perfect entry point. It's small and it's valid. And we all seem to agree on it.
Yep. I agree. I agree on it. I would say, I think the notion that you start with one is kind of encompassed by the word series. I don't see the point of breaking it out because I think it's a meaningful unit.
No, because it's different, because then the next question is, what are you adding the claim to? Are you adding it to CDL? Are you adding it in your own sphere? Are you, etc.?
That's a perfectly valid question, and this you may have found a point where we don't actually necessarily agree, and I don't think we have to. In a sense, I think both scenarios should exist. You could do it personally, or you can do it in the CDL.
But by building on top of that, we can see whether or not it. What are you adding the claim to? Indeed, is it CDL? Is it like your own workspace? Is it?
But seriously, I think this is an interesting and important question to ask about that use case. But I don't think it. How should I put it? I think it's a layer above the use case and digging into it, but I don't think it's changing the use case. We want to do this. Where to do it is a perfectly valid next question, which I think has many answers, but that's another story. But I don't think it changes the use case.
No, it changes the outcome of the use case. So
yes.
What you typically do is you have use cases. This one is done, I would say. But then you need to start discussing what are the outcomes of what happens. What are the events that happen once that use case?
Exactly.
And then you might start pinpointing that you might want different events depending on which system you're talking about.
Exactly.
And I would argue that it is a major use case where you just want to start mapping this out personally. Actually, that's what most of us have been doing so far. We have been mostly argument mapping by ourselves, not really needing curation or approval from other people, not having conflicts.
But embedded in that and possibly resolve the controversy is that I would want to show it to people afterwards.
After the one claim or after
finishing the mapping?
Exactly. That's my
and also invite
disagreed
people.
with.
No. But Tim, I think it's a bit distinct here because you could, if you had a local personal information space, you could still have an export of it and show that to someone. It doesn't mean that it's embedded.
But I would want to invite people to contribute to it because it's like, this is what I got.
Now that's a separate use case. And it's an important separate use case.
Timothy, while you're editing it or at the end when you've created your map?
Doesn't matter. But
yeah, I wouldn't
matter. It's a huge difference.
I mean, it's personally, I wouldn't mind people contributing at the same time, right? I would be happy to find it already there and mostly resolved and then add some things to it, right? So it's not something I feel like this has to be mine. You understand?
No. But I think what you can do depends fully on what system you're adding the claims to. Because if, for example, you're adding the claims to a system where while you're creating a map, it gets removed because it's a duplicate or whatever, or depending on how the system responds to those actions, is that something you want while you're creating your argument?
I think I appreciate some of the distinctions. I think they're relevant, but I think they're premature. I think in terms of we're working with use cases now, and the implications of use case for system design, I think, are another stage. Wouldn't you? agree?
No, because I think it hints at them being separate systems. That's why I'm delving into this.
Well, okay, but
I think it's
Yeah,
a
but
complete
the end goal.
building your own argument map covers a different scope than contributing that argument map and sharing and opening it up for other people to attack it. I think that those are two separate. They don't necessarily. I think you can do it collaboratively from the start, but the implications are different, I would argue.
I think that's absolutely true.
For this use case, the end goal is to resolve the controversy, end rumors, and come to a group consensus.
Yeah.
And rumors and fake news and that sort of thing. So whatever furthers that goal. If it's stuff moving around while I'm working on it and I can't get the job done, that's against the goal of getting the job done. But if it's simultaneous and everybody's contributing, that is actually helping resolve the conflict. So, the system design just has to serve the goal of resolving the controversy. You can create a separate use case that is, as a user, I would like to quietly analyze an issue for myself so I can come to my own conclusion. That might imply a separate design or a separate system or a separate something because the goals are different, but that's not what's in this use case.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I really think, I understand what you're saying, Stephen, about this has implication in the system. I agree, and I even think it's important, but I do think it's a separate stage. It's not just like, if you were saying there are different bounded contexts there and I want to separate them, I'd say, yes, fine, that's part of what we agreed to do. But if you're saying, let's see what are the interpretations for system design, I think that's another stage. I'm not saying it's not valid. I'm not saying it's not important. I do think it's another stage. Right now we were doing use cases, but maybe, I don't know.
I think it's part of refined use case. So Tim is saying, yes, it's a collaborative use case. I'm saying, I think it can also be an individual use case, and I think they're two separate use cases.
But I would say that the so that is probably different.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and this is why I started.
One is so that I can analyze it. So it's to help you structure your own thought process. That's one. So that, and the other one is so that we can collaboratively aggregate all the evidence to analyze.
And this is this one, and I've created this one. So I have three so that's. Please read them at this point, because that part I agree is important to do because that's about use cases and motivations, which is independent from the system analysis.
So 14 would be, it doesn't really say, right?
What? Doesn't really say what?
Whether it's local or global.
No, it doesn't. And I'm saying, I think that's out of scope. Saying whether it's local or
I'm
global
it's
is
not. It's a use case. That's exactly what I'm saying. I don't think it's out of. I think it's
but
very relevant
read
to
15,
recognize
what I'm saying is the global aspects are captured by other use cases, which have their own implications. And that's, please read 15 and 16.
Expose my maps. Cartographer.
Actually, all those are as a cartoon.
Yeah, I'm missing a clear one from the local perspective. But okay.
There would be just like either a personal analysis. The two so that's that I could think of is I just want to quietly analyze something on my own.
Yeah, this is it. This is this one. 14 is the individual.
Oh, it is? That was my question. So local.
Okay.
My analysis.
Literally.
Yes.
But when it's sharpen my analysis, I would remove and possibly resolve the controversy.
Yeah, because you don't resolve it, you just analyze it for yourself.
Resolve for yourself is what I meant there.
For yourself, yeah.
For myself. Okay, let me add for myself.
Okay.
Okay.
So there's another so that also matches the local context, which is I just want to map it out so that I can show someone else my opinion.
Yeah. But that's
But that
15. No?
isn't that
It is kind of, yeah, it is contained.
it's my
in the
1, 2,
previous
3,
one.
right? It's kind of
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
So what you typically do next, and I'm not saying we have to go there now, is but these things you interact
not
on.
done.
Okay.
Sorry, but I've been, we never did 4 to 7.
Yeah, I'm
So-
not claiming we're done, but I'm just saying there's something missing in the process, which is identifying the things you interact with as concrete entities. Which makes
Fair
use
enough.
cases hard to compare or build on top of one another. So I would argue if we do seem to have some agreement with 14.
Well, we had claims and arguments here. Look at
Yeah, but what is a series of related claims and arguments? And that's what I would call the argument map or the argumentation or the whatever. And I think that's where some of our different system opinions might come from, because I do look at 14 as an important use case and even an essential use case, even as part of a collaborative system, because of use case 15, indeed, because I think it's a very common use case to do it personally and then share that whole argument map with other people. And yes, it's also totally a valid use case to contribute just a single claim to an existing argument map you find somewhere. But I think it's very relevant to look at these as separate use cases, because that's where I would draw different bound contexts.
Fair enough, but what I'm saying is interesting about the bounded context. We'll talk about it, but you may be right here. But I'm saying when you say what's the map as an object, the arguments are themselves relationship between claims, and this is detailed in 4. And I think it's time to dig into 4, because this digging into what exactly
you can't go cherry picking, and I mean. Right. I mean, there's a whole bunch of ambiguous, unstructured related use cases right now that are all to some degree or lesser degree related or not related to one another. It's very hard to make sense of this as a coherent whole right now, because there's no process. They don't build on top of one another.
But then let's okay, so let's rephrase them so they do. But what I'm saying is, by continuously ignoring 4, we're making it impossible to make that building happen.
Let's delve into 4.
Thank you.
So I'm missing that's here. I'm told I don't look at this as user stories. No. I know that you want to formalize it indeed, so that's already a good question. I would argue so that I can more engage audiences on a more granular level with my arguments would be one so that for me. The reason for formalization for me is so that rather than people having to just comment on an entire argumentation as a whole, they can start commenting on specific aspects that I formalized of my argumentation, so they can oppose like one specific supporting or opposing argument, etc. That would be my so that for formalization.
That's
why is this wait, why the word my worldview? The structure of my worldview. That's the part I don't.
Okay, that's a very good question, but let me one thing at a time. So
I would argue.
But okay. I'll answer before writing. I was going to address Stephen, but can I? My worldview, because you're always working as a human being, even if you're working on a global structure like the CDL, you're working from a viewpoint, and you're curating what you understand of the global structure, and that's what you're curating. You're curating according to your viewpoint.
I would say that
but
you're looking at other people's arguments, and you're looking at other people's claims. It's part of a debate. So what you're really formalizing is the structure of the debate, whether you agree with it or not, because you don't want to like.
Let's dive into this. You're right. It's worth diving into. I'm working on federated systems, so it's true. My viewpoint is that you work first on formalizing your worldview, and then you work on formalizing the common worldview. And it's true that I made this into a many-step process which is to first work on your worldview so it's coherent and you're ready to present it to the world. And then you find correspondences between your worldview and either someone else's or a common repository already federated, because you're integrating your worldview into somebody else's. My view of this analysis, my view of this process is that you're always starting from, as you said, you know, I'm making this map of something and that's your worldview or someone else's, but it's your viewpoint on someone else's. So it's still part of your worldview.
Yeah, but so I think that we're talking about completely different sets of use cases here, because, you know, all mine are about, as a user, I'm wanting to collaborate with a lot of people to find the truth. And yours is a totally different, I want to build up my worldview and analyze it as much as possible so I gain understanding of myself and I'm ready to present it to everybody as a whole. That's a very different thing.
No, sorry. When I say my worldview, it's not just what I believe, it's how I perceive others as part of my worldview. So the whole understanding other people's points of view is part of structuring my worldview. So and maybe that should be clarified, fair enough. Good point.
Yeah, well, let me put it a different way. There's a so that I'm not understanding at all. And I think it's very different.
Yeah, I was trying to write it and you cut me there.
No, but no, I think it's a fundamental difference between me and you in
Yes,
terms of why the system has to be built. And I don't.
No, I don't think it's true. I think it's a difference, not about the goal, but about the process. I don't think I think we'll spend most of our time in order to curate the common system, which I agree is the goal, curating our personal view of the common goal and then integrating into the common system rather than acting directly in the common system, because any action of in the common system is bound to be controversial. So you want to work on a fork, on a personal fork, and do a pull request, because global agreement is something you have to obtain before whatever you do as curation gets to be accepted as common and canonical.
I mean, both are valid use cases.
Yeah, no, and I agree there. Both are valid use cases. But in terms, I just want to. Tim says we have different goals. No, it's just that we have different views of how to achieve that goal.
Yeah, which are different use cases.
Yes.
And then it's just a matter of deciding whether or not we both or all want to work on supporting those use cases. If we don't, that's a clear indication that they probably are separate bounded context.
I agree totally.
Yeah. So that's the point of this exercise, is trying to be very explicit in the use cases, the reasons for them, which are the so that's, so we can aggregate them and start drawing some different systems that we might work on separately.
Yeah.
And what do we share? And so ideally, we also identify some core use cases we can all agree on. What is that?
Yeah.
And my point is still there. I call it argument modeling.
But then do you see why I'm saying our goals do not differ, but our views of how to achieve them differs? Was that clear? Was I clear?
Yeah, you're clear. Yeah, I'm not finished thinking about that.
Fair enough.
So for me, I mean, whether or not you contribute to a collaborative system or you do it personally, what is common is how you structure it. And I think we are all, that's what all the sessions have been about, is like trying to come to the structure, not necessarily the process. That's why I've been arguing so many times to look at that, just the structure alone as a separate bound context. Then I can go off and do my own thing, whatever way I want to. CDL can go their own way. I think that is the commonality. And if we can decouple the process, be it like how you come to agreement and all that stuff from everything else, it's going to really help us focus.
I hear what you're saying, Stephen. I partly agree, except that I believe that for the process of branch, pull request, and merge that I'm proposing, and here I'm arguing for impact of the systems. I did say they came downstream, and I do still think they come downstream, but I do think it has impact on the modeling.
Yes.
And
No, I'm not saying we shouldn't look at all use cases. That's the whole point. We should look
Yeah.
at a broad set of use cases to see where we disagree and where not, and what impact it will have on the interactions among different use cases.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So here I get into precisely the modeling and this has nothing to do with the fact that there's kind of two approaches to all this, which
No,
is whether we do it.
My problem with these 1 through 6 is that there's no so these are all interactions, but for each of these, so all of this I consider argument modeling. I think we agree with all of these. Some to one degree or another, we agree some variants of these are needed. What I think we need to focus on also,
Just missing the definition of thought.
Yeah.
Among other things, but like, why do you want to identify entities and claims? Why do you want to identify claims? I think Tim gave a great starting point for that, just to introduce the entity claim. Why do you want to add arguments, etc.? I think that's missing for all of these new entities which make up the argument model. We need use cases. So that's
Okay, fair enough. But I think let's finish. I'm just thinking. There's, I think, the distinction between Tim's view of the user interaction and my view of this interaction needs to be captured as use cases and maybe separated from this tentative analysis of the argument domain, which is fair enough. And when you say each of them needs a use case, fair enough, that's interesting. And I think whether it's expressed in the common edit use set of goals or in the fork PR merge style of goals shouldn't matter. Their use cases
we need
about
to find a way to decouple
analysis.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. We need to find a formulation for all this.
Maybe it's like I think what we're missing is a word for map or argumentation or container of objects or
yes. Okay.
That map can either be the one that lives in a collaborative shared space, or it can be a personal one, and then you can start saying, as a user, I want to add a claim to a map, and we can disregard whether or not maybe for the time being it's collaborative or not.
Okay, and here we go into something that's important. Is I think curated maps are another object that I didn't put into those use cases yet, versus the global information space or the local personal information space. But I want to distinguish the information space from the curated maps. Or you see what I'm saying?
No.
Okay, that's important. When I'm adding a claim to the system, whether it's an individual system, a local fork, or a more global team space, or the whole federation, doesn't matter. I'm adding information to an information space, to a container, a container that exists sui generis in the system. And when I think of maps, you can generate a local map, say the neighborhood of this claim or this entity, or this argument, doesn't matter. You can generate a global map, and I think it'll be often illegible because there's too many things. Or you can make a curated map and say, okay, I want to make one piece of the data intelligible, so I'll pick and choose. These are the things I want to see on the map. That's a curated map. You've chosen.
How is that different from? I don't see the difference. The only difference I see is that how you pick and choose what goes into the container or the map is different, and the process behind that is different. But the result is still a connection of claims and arguments and entities and what have you not. No.
The result is the same. I doubt the visualization techniques are the same.
Yes, agreed.
But I think that it's a very different thing, because one is editorialized and represents one person's viewpoint, and the other is, system generates according to all that's there and may give pointers. The question is it again representing a viewpoint, or is it representing, okay, here's all we know about this? And I think this is why they're profoundly different and need to be represented as different, because you need to know that this is expressing a viewpoint versus.
This is interesting. Are you arguing for different models for both of these or not?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I'm not necessarily convinced, but I find it interesting because I thought you were always the one that was arguing for one model to rule them all.
For one what?
One model to rule them all.
No. I'm so much not a one model to rule them all kind of guy.
Okay. Irrelevant.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that's interesting because to me, what I would call argument modeling would be the commonality between these two. I don't necessarily think you need a different model for these separate processes. Yes, you need different UI, probably different visualizations, but I do expect them to operate on the same model. But I don't necessarily have any strong arguments for it than that right now.
Okay.
But that's an interesting point to delve into then, in other words. I don't know how Timothy feels about that.
I don't see the benefit in having your own worldview that you're curating for yourself.
You don't? Okay, I can bring up many arguments for that. I'll do that by next
No,
week.
you can bring up arguments, but let me put it this way. There's things that I fundamentally do not want. I won't disagree with a use case because it's something I don't want, right? So I'm trying to figure out if it's something that should be built for the canonical debate or if it's something that should be a separate system that interacts with it. And there's a lot of system complications that work into that because the whole idea of forking and merging, it's very complex, right?
Yeah, but I don't think we need to address that. I think the question for you is...
I'm not addressing it. I'm just saying, you're asking me how I feel about that and how I feel about separate models or the same model and that sort of thing. And I don't have an opinion yet because I'm more concerned about the complexities of forking and merging and all that.
Yeah, but I don't think the whole point of looking at it as separate bound context is to remove that complexity. That's an important point he walks out on. Because the exact point would obviously be to agree on the modeling itself, be it collaborative or not. If we can agree on the modeling itself, we can ignore all the other complexity disregarding how you would do that, right?
Right, but so I don't see anything so far. I don't really care about the model of the other approach, right? I don't care about the model, except that if we're going to have to integrate it, it needs to be compatible. But there are concepts that I know that Marc-Antoine wants that I don't see as essential to the shared map, or at least I haven't agreed that they're necessary yet. And so that, I don't know, we'll just have to get there. I don't have an opinion yet.
Okay, one thing I will say quickly is I do not believe the global map of arguments to remain intelligible. I expect at some point there will be so many arguments and counter arguments that it will be illegible, and curated maps will be the only point of entry. That's my belief. That's why I believe in curated maps.
I agree, but because my question is a curated map a sub part of the whole messy map or not?
Yes.
If it is, then it's the same data model in my opinion.
Oh yeah, that way, yes. That way.
So
yes.
in that sense, I agree it will become messy. I have learned to embrace messiness in that sense. That's what I'm designing for. And I agree a curated view will be needed, like an awesome curated view, like society library is needed. But my point is exactly that I think it's the same data model and it's just a curated view is a subset That's all it is to me.
I agree. I agree. It's a subset. It's a different data model because it needs all the specific data structures to A, do the picking, and B, do the representation.
But that's the process of creating a curated, but the eventual curated subset, is it using the same data model or not? And I'm arguing
it is yes in the sense that it's a subset, no in the sense that it adds data structure to that.
Yes.
But okay, so
okay. So if Timothy can agree on that as well, then that's a scope.
No, I don't agree.
Okay.
I think if we get to that point, we've failed at our system design.
Which point?
That the only points of entry are curated maps. I think we've failed in our goal.
But
so I think the whole point of the canonical of reducing duplication, the whole point of scoring is essentially moderation of garbage, right? And so
okay, and I believe
Timothy.
even without garbage, I think the global thought structure will be too complex and rich to be intelligible.
So, like, I would agree
we're allowed
with
to
essentially
disagree
curating entry points. There would be, I see, you're going to have a fight for what's important, what's not important. I agree with that, right? But that's separate from curating views on, I think this is right, which
I hear what you're saying, yes, but I think curated views are inevitable. Whether I think viewpoint views are as important, and we've been through that, right? That there has to be
and Society Libraries is specifically working on that, and I'm working with them, and I'd like to enable it. But I want it to always be able to go back to the original and show how far off from the full map you are, right?
Yeah, but I think show how different you are from a more global perspective. But I don't think that going to the global perspective will end up being a full map. It will be signals on the local map saying, well, you can have a full local map. And I think what you can do is show a full local map from a curated map and hint at a broader viewpoint that way. But I don't think a global map will ever be intelligible. But
these are different viewpoints. I would agree with Mike Antoine. Timothy, you have a different goal. That's fine. My main point here is, as long as we can agree on what a map is, be it the optimal one that CDL hopes to strive for, be it the local one you play around with them all your own arguments that nobody else sees. It's just your own.
Listen, team. If you succeed, yay!
if we can agree on what that map is and not what that map has to be, like who curates it or whatever, if we can agree on what the map is and on the use case of the interactions on that map, we have found a common thing we can all work on.
But certain principles have to be upheld, and that includes not allowing people to create their own filter bubbles, right? That's one of the goals, is to end filter bubbles. And so any design that permits people to get around that, I would not approve. It's contrary to the goal. I have to go now.
We're way over the hour. Thank you all.
Yeah, there's the principles. I don't know how you get them.
I get your
as a system designer, I guess. Yeah.
I get your principle. And we
we'll
can talk about it.
We'll develop that. It's important, but it's recorded.
Thanks.
Great.
Okay.
See you on Tuesday.
And approved.
See you on Tuesday, guys. Maybe. Well, I mean, yes, you guys will see on Tuesday. Tuesday, my status is unsure at this point, but I will do my best to make time for our hour. If not, feel free to have another of your sessions or whatever you want to do. But I'll let you know ahead of time.
Well, it sounds like you're the main point of contention, rather. But okay, we'll see.
We'll continue this otherwise. I think there's still work to do this here.
Yeah.
Thank you all. I think this was a productive session.
Me too.
Thank you. Thank you as well. Bye.
Bye.